It's Kate.
And Oliver Hudson. Host of the new podcast, Sibling
Revelry.
That's right.
We started this show because, you know what? No one talks about siblings and that dynamic.
The siblings, they know each other better than anybody.
Yes.
You know.
Listen to Sibling Revelry on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hi, I'm Frances Fry.
And I'm Ann Morris.
And we are the hosts of a new TED podcast called Fixable.
We've helped leaders at some of the world's most competitive companies solve all kinds of problems.
On our show, we'll pull back the curtain and give you the type of honest, unfiltered advice we usually reserve for top executives. Give us a call and we'll help you solve the problems you're stuck on. Listen to Fixable on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Episode 309, Money Made Easy.
Welcome to the Frugal Friends podcast, where you'll learn to save money, embrace simplicity, and live a richer life. Here are your hosts, Jen and Jill.
Welcome to the Frugal Friends podcast. My name is Jill.
And my name is Allison.
Heyo! It's a special one. You caught it. Jen's not here. She's on maternity leave. And that makes this a very special episode for many reasons.
I was like,
it's special
sorry,
because...
Jen. Sorry, Jen.
I miss Jen. It's special because Jen is caring for a baby, and that's special. And then it's also special because, goodness, Allison, we have had such history. Allison was the stand-in co-host the first time Jen had a baby, because she likes to do this like regularly. But it was about 4 years ago that she stood in as a co-host, and she's back again, old hat. So Allison Baggerly, in case you don't know her, well, she's a stand-in co-host for us, always and forever. But also, she is the brains behind Inspired Budget. If you don't already, you need to follow her on Instagram. She's also got a podcast called Inspired Budget. She literally wrote a book called Money Made Easy. It's the inspiration for the title of this episode. So she is bringing all of the knowledge to us, but also in the very specific form of co-host, which is different from being a guest on the podcast. I would say it's a little bit more special. So we're still going to go through the articles. One of them is from Allison herself through her blog, because goodness, you are all over the internet doing so much stuff, talking about budgeting, talking about making money easier, and this book that you've got, which is amazing. We'll hear more about that. But we're going to just be learning more about how to approach finances in a little bit easier of a way, less stressful, full of confidence. And I'm so glad that you're here with me, Allison. Thanks for coming on.
I'm honored you guys wanted me to come back after the first co-hosting session, because you committed to me for 3 full episodes. That's you asked me out on 3 dates at first, at once.
Just off the bat, overzealous.
Yes. You were just like, I know this is going to work. We're going to go on 3 dates. And I was like, heck yes, we're going to do this. So thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Yay. That's how actually Eric and I got together, was he asked me on an overzealous first date. So it works. It works.
Yeah.
When you're just committed from the jump.
You put your intentions out there and you stand by them. I like that about you, Jill.
But first, tell us who's sponsoring this show, Allison.
Oh my gosh. Today's sponsor is something I love so much, and it is ADHD medicine. So I was diagnosed with ADHD as an adult. And when I tell you that this medicine has brought so much focus and energy and amazingness to my life, I attribute it to me helping write a book, an entire book. So I love my ADHD medicine. I stand by it. It just helps me focus. And honestly, I don't know why I didn't have this sooner. Sometimes I think I can conquer the world when I have my medicine. And I decided to start by writing my book. I wrote my book, and with the help of my ADHD medicine. Yes.
That's amazing. Where can people get this book? Because I know it's brand new, right? It's like hot off the press.
It is. It's hot off the press. It's called Money Made Easy. You can get it at Barnes & Noble. It's in stock at most Barnes & Nobles. It's in some Canadian bookstores. The main Canadian bookstore, I can't remember the name of it. I think it's Ingram, I want to say. I can't remember. And then you can get it on Amazon easily. But it's called Money Made Easy. It is super wonderful. What I love about it is I personally think that, number one, let's be real here. A lot of money books are boring. I mean, a lot of nonfiction books are boring, right? However, inside of every chapter of my book, it's wrapped up in stories. So I try to make it a little bit more enjoyable for you to read about money. And it's less of like this step-by-step guide and more of a choose your own adventure book. And what I mean by that is my money's different from your money, Jill, which is different from Jen's money, which is different from whoever is listening right now, your money. And so what works for me might not work for you. And that doesn't make me wrong or you wrong. It just means we're different. And so instead of telling you cookie cutter ways to deal with your money, because it probably won't work, I just share with you different tools and different ways to budget, pay off debt, save money, change your relationship with money. And then you can choose what works for you.
I love that. And we're going to actually get to go a little bit behind the scenes in this episode and gather tips even before you buy the book, but hopefully it'll just make you more interested in getting this book. If this topic is of interest to you and you're liking what you hear, feel free to queue up after this, episode 248, Simple Money, Rich Life. That was an interview with Bob and Linda Lodick. Super great. We love our interviews and other people's perspectives. And so just another opportunity to learn how you can simplify your personal finances. Then we've also got episode 292, The Science of Simplicity and Your Money. And that's looking more into the behavioral sciences behind the decisions that we make with money, really decisions across the board. So those are two great ones, but let's talk this one. And we're going to get into our articles. This first one is titled Finding Your Catalyst to Change Your Money for Good. And this comes from our one and only Allison Baggerly on the Inspired Budget blog, which is also linked to your podcast. Like you've got a whole brand going on, which is really awesome. And it looks like this article is going through really the first chapter of your book. So we're kind of being able to get a behind the scenes sneak peek at your book, but then also able to begin taking some steps and learning how do we make money easier for us, but through the specific lens of a catalyst. So I mean, you're the expert on this. So what were your thoughts on this article, Allison? What do you want to say about it?
Well, I think it's an amazing article and contribution to society. Yes. This article is actually also a podcast. So you can go listen to Inspired Budget Podcast, episode 96. But in this article, I really share about how a catalyst for change is where you need to start when it comes to your money. I know for me personally, just having my mom sit down and say like, Allison, you need to be better with your money. When I was a young adult, I was like, okay, mom, whatever. And it wasn't until I was in a spot where I hit rock bottom and my husband hit rock bottom that we were willing to find a change that worked for us and stick with it and see consistency with our money. So for our family, that was whenever we realized we wouldn't be able to afford daycare payments when we became unexpectedly pregnant. It was very much we're standing at this fork in the road. Something needs to change. Which way are we going to go? Are we going to do the responsible thing and make some sacrifices and really look at our behaviors with money and make changes? Or are we going to keep doing what we're doing and just hope it works out?
Yeah.
So we were at this fork in the road. And I think that so often people find themselves at these forks in the road. Now, it might not be as dramatic and as our experience where it's like, okay, you either make the money or you don't have daycare for your baby. You can't take your baby to school with you whenever you're a teacher. Like I used to joke that I would like stick him in a filing cabinet. I was like, I'm just going to put him in this filing cabinet. No one will know. We don't have to pay for daycare. But I think that so often, even in some of our small instances in life, that we are faced with this choice. And your catalyst for changing your money doesn't have to be this big, grand thing that happens to you. It can be something small. It can be a dream you have for your future. It can be a person in your life. It can be the fact that you are annoyed that when you go to the grocery store, you have to pull up your checking account, your bank app, and look and see how much money you have because you want to make sure you have enough money in your checking account before you swipe your debit card. That small, seemingly annoying thing can be enough reason to change your relationship and how you manage your money.
I really appreciate the story, even the personal story that you give here about, I think you use the word two broke teachers struggling to get by. Then you find out you're pregnant. And I think these types of stories, as you've described, are throughout your book, help us to connect and realize, well, what is that for me? But also giving permission to say, it doesn't always look like this. It doesn't always look like rock bottom. Sometimes it's the daily life annoyances. But I also appreciate the tie-in because when we talk about, okay, money made easy, simplifying our money, feeling more confident in it feeling like an easy task for us. How do we get there? And I appreciate that your perspective is starting at a catalyst. Part of the way that we make money easy is figuring out, well, what is our motivator for engaging in this? And then how are we going to get there? So this is almost like step one. And I think this is probably how most people would describe a why, identifying your why. There's something I really love about the word catalyst, though, and that is, I think, unique to what you've identified here. And the way that you describe it in this article, breaking free of the shoulds requires a motivator that you call a catalyst. So a catalyst just essentially a motivator and really like a launching point, the thing that you can springboard off of. And the way that you also go into, or the article says, your reason for changing the way you spend and manage your money. It's the reason that you will sacrifice, potentially for a period of time, so that you can live in abundance for the rest of your life. Sometimes it requires that. Sometimes as we identify our catalyst, it is going to mean then saying no to other things, not for the sake of deprivation, but for the sake of whatever our catalyst is, whatever our motivator is. And I've seen personally that can shift throughout life. I think that I experienced a catalyst in my debt payoff journey. And more recently, I'm experiencing different catalysts for different financial goals that I have. And so I think sometimes it can shift and change. And maybe we've got multiple catalysts, like here's my catalyst for this goal and here's my catalyst for that goal. I don't want to, that's making it kind of complicated. I'll like keep it simple and we can look at one at a time. But
that would overwhelm me. Like being like, oh my gosh, I have to have all of these reasons. That would overwhelm me. But if that's what works for you, that's great. But you're exactly right. I love what you said about how your catalyst can change. And I think that's so true. I remember I was in Mexico with Jen and our friend Caroline, who we'll get to talk to here.
We'll hear from
in a couple episodes. And we had this, we're at this all-inclusive resort drinking, this is before Jen is pregnant. We're in this adults only pool and drinking, and we're having these like very deep conversations about how in life it's okay to pivot. It's okay to change. It's okay to, as Jen says, throw a plot twist. And I think the same is true when it comes to our catalyst and our reason behind it. The reason why I might have done that back then and made money choices back then and be willing to sacrifice then is totally different than now. And that's okay. I welcome that change. As I grow and change as a person, my views, my desires, my wants, my dreams, my goals, and what I'm willing to work on will also change. And I think it's so beautiful because it just shows how money is so personal and we can't just like put it in this little box and say, this is exactly what you need to do. And this is exactly what will work for you, because it's not true.
I also like how the article goes on to talk about how your catalyst must be something that's at the forefront, not necessarily something that you are constantly thinking about and ruminating on and contributing to your anxiety, but something present and that is stronger than the frustrations that you will face along the way. So I think there's even some tips focus in that and identifying what is my catalyst, what is going to help make this easier, how am I going to stick to the plan, what is something that is at the forefront, what is something that's ever present, and what is something that's going to be stronger than the frustrations faced. And I know we've kind of alluded to or touched on a bit what some of those can be. You've said rock bottom. You've also listed in the article that your catalyst could be the little annoyances throughout the day, your sleepless nights, your ever-present desire for a vacation that just seems looming and unattainable, but you want it so badly, or your desire for financial literacy. Like, it doesn't have to be this massive story that culminates in someone's rock bottom. It could be these other things, as long as we're making sure that whatever it is that we've identified is, as you've said, stronger than the frustration that we're going to face on a daily basis in our efforts to simplify our money, become more confident.
Exactly. And I think it's important to note that those frustrations that you're going to face are going to change over time. So, for example, when we were paying off debt and our catalyst was finding more money in our budget to send to debt so we could eventually keep all of the money we made, I remember my frustrations during the summer was seeing everyone take these beach vacations. I live in Texas and everyone goes to Florida. They go to Destin, actually, 30A area. And I remember just thinking like, I want that. I want that. And my frustration was that I felt like I couldn't have that to the level that I wanted it. And I had to remind myself, okay, like, that doesn't mean you're never going to have it. But then guess what? Come October, that was no longer a frustration for me. My frustrations became something else. So your frustrations can change, but as long as you go back to your catalyst, it can allow you to at least pause and question, right? And that's the goal. The goal isn't to be perfect. The goal is to pause and say, okay, if I make this choice with my money, is that going to help me get closer to this goal? And the answer, it can either be yes or no. And sometimes we still go ahead with it, and that's okay. It's not about being perfect. But when you have that thing to go back to and to think about, that's where I think the magic is. It's the willingness to pause and ponder.
And then the article wraps up with an action point, which we can all do. You could pause this podcast now and do it, or do it at the end, whenever you want. But to take 10 minutes to journal or write down, if the word journal scares you and makes you start to sweat, just take 10 minutes and write down. Dear diary, today
I had a diary. Hold on. Can I tell a really random thing? I had a diary in 6th grade, and I felt weird. I was like past the Dear Diary stage of my life, but I felt weird being like Dear Diary, and I felt like I had to write a letter to someone. So I named my diary Jenny. And I was like, Dear Jenny.
No, you did
not. And I wrote to an imaginary person that was my diary. I've never told anyone this. Except for my mom, she knows.
Thanks for entrusting us with this information. I don't even think my husband knows.
Dear Jenny.
Well,
yeah. So,
dear Jenny. So take some time to write to Jenny.
Yes.
About what your catalyst could be. So some of the prompts in this to kind of get closer to understanding yourself in this way include: what hopes do you have for your future? What could managing your money better do for your life? What is worth the temporary sacrifice and changing your relationship with money? Those are just some questions. As you've listened to this first part of the podcast, you kind of have other ideas, go for it. But these are some of the really helpful questions that are going to help you really narrow down and focus in on what is my catalyst. And that's going to be a really great launching point for simplifying money, which gets us to this next article, which I found really interesting. This one comes, it's actually on LinkedIn, and it's titled "Personal Finance is Simple. We Make It Complicated."
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry, and literally billions of dollars are being invested. So buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power. So how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing. And of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/strategic. That's oracle.com/strategic. oracle.com/strategic.
Discover the heartwarming and hilarious world of sibling connections on Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson.
You might be asking yourself, what is sibling revelry?
Yeah, well, we just made it up.
They'll have some laughs and maybe inspire some people along the way with universal tales of what it's like to grow up with brothers and sisters.
We're full-blood siblings, the only full-blood sibling.
In our family. Well, not in the world. I mean...
No, in the whole world. That's just it. Like, no one...
Dive into family tales and explore the human mind with guests like Joel and Benji Madden.
And it's fun because we've decided to open it up, to really like all kinds of different siblings. And it's going to be an awesome season.
It's more than a podcast. It's a celebration of the ties that bind us. Listen to Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I have all the thoughts about this article. I read this article and I was like, okay, Mr. CFA guy, I don't know. His name is, I'm not even going to try to say his name because I will butcher it. But it says one idiot is his, it's how he describes himself. It's one of his
It's true.
Like things like he's the CEO of this and a financial literacy campaigner. And it also says one idiot. So that's interesting. But I really enjoy this article because I agree. Personal finance is simple. We make it complicated. And I think it's a collective we of the world and everything pulling at our attention and all the different people telling us what we need to do and everyone telling us what we need to buy, people telling us what we need to have prepared for when we die, and then all the options along with it. It's like when you go into the grocery store and you try to pick out a type of peanut butter and there's just like 90 different peanut butters. Life didn't used to be that way. There was one type of peanut butter when you went into the grocery store and back before we were alive. And I think that we as a society make it complicated, and then we as ourselves can make it complicated too. So I loved it.
Why do we do that? I know. Sometimes I think it's job creation. Like, make it complicated so that someone can be an expert and they can mystify it and take your money. That's my pessimistic view.
Well, I'm more of a silver lining, half glass full kind of girl myself. I think that make it complicated because we think it needs to be complicated because money is so important. We know that money is important. It seeps into every aspect of our life for the rest of time. I mean, even thinking I think about oh my gosh, what if I'm 90 years old and I'm in a nursing home and it's costing my kids $10,000 a month? How do I make sure I don't run out of money? The fact that that is a concern of mine and that I'm worried about that, I'm doing that to myself. I make it complicated because I see it as important. And when we see something as important, sometimes we think it has to be complicated because it is important. But that's not true.
That's an interesting theory. Yeah. We complicate things when they're important. I like that. So this article is primarily written around a piece of advice given, what did they say? A while ago from a person named Scott Adams from the Dilbert cartoon series many years back. And it's just a simple one-page financial plan. And there is something too. I see a one-page financial plan and I want to discount it for some reason. It couldn't be that simple. But then as I read through it, I don't see many holes to be poked. Certainly, there are addendums that could be written to any one of these. And there are steps, and each step could take a long time. But it can be all written down in one page. And so I'll just go through and describe it, and then we can kind of say a little bit more about it. But the one page financial plan is, and it's titled Everything You Need to Know About Personal Investing. Make a will, pay off your credit card balance, get term life insurance if you have a family to support, fund your 401k to the max, fund your IRA to the max, buy a house if you want to live in a house and can afford it.
I love that one.
6 months expenses. Yeah, I do too. Put 6 months expenses in a money market account. Take whatever money is left over and invest 70% in a stock index fund, 30% in a bond fund, through any discount brokerage company, and never touch it until retirement. If any of this confuses you or you have something special going on, retirement, college planning, tax issue, hire a fee-based financial planner, not one who charges a percentage of your portfolio. That's it. That's the entire one-page financial plan. And of course, there are entire books that could be written on any one of these bullet points.
Yeah,
so it's not to say that each of them don't have things to do as a part of them, but what a summary. And it's also occurring to me, what an original TikTok almost. Like, this is what we love. We love the bite size, like, how do we get all this information into a 6-second video or like something that is super simple? We do love to simplify it. And then we also love to overcomplicate. I don't know. We're complicated creatures in some regard, but we can make complicated things more attainable. And I think every one of these is great. Certainly there are circumstances where this wouldn't make sense. I mean, for me personally, I don't have a 401k through the place that I work. So, I've got to look into and educate myself on what are the workarounds for that. Of course, you may not want to buy a house. For certain people, more than 6 months of living expenses would be good. But if we're looking for, give me something bite-sized, what can I do? Here it is. And I think this is simple.
It is simple, but we make it so complicated. And you know why? I'm looking at this list right now, and I feel like a lot of people immediately, and tell me if this is me being pessimistic, because I'm not usually pessimistic. I feel like a lot of people would look at this and they would say, well, that's great, but that doesn't apply to me because. And we're always finding reasons why we stand out from this list. This doesn't apply to me because
just did.
You did because I don't have a 401k offered, right? And so it's sometimes I feel like we discount everything on the list because it doesn't apply to us in one aspect. And sometimes I think that we discount this and we make excuses because it's hard work on our part, because it takes time and attention. And I can totally relate this to like my personal health journey right now, and like trying to work out and get better and just in more shape to where like I can run outside and play soccer with my kids and not feel like I have to stop. And it's like, I only need 1 hour in the day to be very intentional about exercise, but I can find you all the reasons why I can't do it. And I feel like sometimes that's what we do with our money too. I don't usually actually like to relate money to like dieting or working out. But that was a very seamless analogy there.
Sometimes there's overlap in those worlds, and we're whole people. So the issues and barriers that we face when it comes to our personal finances are most likely very similar issues and barriers that we're facing in other aspects of our personhood, physical, emotional, mental. And so I think it is worth moving through. I think growth in any one area or aspect of our life means growth in the entire thing. If we are able to learn how to get on a regular exercise routine, we are more likely going to be able to get on a budget, because there are some similar brain pathways at work in being able to do that. And so I think that's another way of being able to talk about making our money easy is recognizing the intersection of all aspects of our personhood, that just growth in any area of our lives is going to mean growth for the whole. And it's going to help us financially, not to mention in other areas as well. So yeah. I mean, I personally, I think it's a great tie-in. But then, so to move through the article, I think it then goes on because the author adds more to this one pager that was initially put out by this Scott Adams. And so they review the components of financial planning, and we'll go through each of them, but I'll just highlight the main categories that when it comes to financial planning. So we're not necessarily just talking about day-to-day managing personal expenses. We're talking about the whole thing of how do we manage our personal finances, not just how do we budget. Well, that's a part of this.
Right. That's an aspect of it.
Right. So we're talking about protection, savings, and growth primarily. That everything we do with our financial planning falls under one of those three categories. And then there's some additional kind of outliers that are maybe good to have or good to do. So we'll go through them. If you want to kick us off with protection, what falls under that category when we're looking at protection, savings, growth? What's protection?
We have life insurance, health insurance, home and motor insurance. So basically, we're just hoping that life doesn't just take advantage of us. Things happen and we are left up a creek without a paddle. How about that?
Look at you. Oh, the creativity that we need to implement when expletives are taken away. I love it.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah.
So I mean, I definitely think that these are things that I think most people know that they're supposed to do and are actually pretty, in terms of delegating them or actually going through the process, can be very simple. Obviously, health insurance, usually you have someone at your HR or at your job, if you're working a traditional 9-to-5 that offers health insurance, they're going to sit down and be like, okay, we have these 3 days, guys. Let's get you signed up. And so it's kind of like someone holding your hand through that. Home insurance, same thing. If you're buying a house, you don't have a choice. You can't buy that house without home insurance policy. And then car insurance, same thing. It's illegal to not have car insurance. Life insurance, though, I think can be easily overlooked unless you have like a guide, someone telling you. And then it gets complicated when you go to a salesperson and they try to sell you something that might not be best for you. Like before, like in that original list, he talks about getting term life insurance. And then he says, you want whole life insurance policy? It's worse. Like don't get it. But
there is humor throughout the article.
There is humor. I think that we complicate it whenever we're trying to decipher what of the life insurance policies, which one is best for our family. And other people complicate it for us when they try to sell us different things. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I would recommend term life insurance. Do your own due diligence on that. And also, I want to add to this protection category and insurances. If you're renting, I would really encourage renters insurance because your landlord will only cover damage done to their property, not yours. That is not covered. And so especially if you've got items of high value that if they were lost in a fire, you would be devastated, get those things covered. And renter's insurance is usually quite affordable.
Yes.
I want to say less than $100 a month. So shop around, but I'm going to highly, highly recommend that.
Yes. I think it should be
think,
required.
oh, I'm renting, like it's all going to be covered. It's not. And I've seen way too many people think that they were covered and not be, and really be up that creek with no paddle.
Yes. So there's a woman in my neighborhood and she's renting a house here. She has a family of 5 kids and they had a water pipe burst in the middle of the night and their upstairs flooded the downstairs area. And they had to leave their house for 2 weeks while the owner renovated the home. Well, where were they going to go? Their renter's insurance paid for a hotel. And so they actually had 2 hotel rooms with like a suite because of the size of their family. They paid for that and they gave them a daily stipend for food. So that there alone, it covers the cost of that. And it also replaced some of the items in their home that was lost. But it's like, we always think it's not going to happen to us, but it will. And
don't think that.
Exactly. I personally wish that renter's insurance was a requirement. Just like home insurance is a requirement, I wish renter's insurance was. And then I'm going to throw this one in there because of where I live in the Houston area. We also have flood insurance personally, just because we are in an area, our house did not flood during Hurricane Harvey, but literally 3/4 of a mile down the road it did. And even though we're not ever supposed to flood, I'm like, I don't want it's to me, it's not worth the risk. So we actually pay like $600 a year in flood insurance. And obviously for homes that might be in a flood area, it's required as well.
Yeah. So this is the time to actually consider worst case scenario and what are you going to wish that you had in those circumstances.
Yes.
It's also a protection against some unnecessary anxiety that you can sleep at night knowing, well, you know what? I did this step of protection. So then it moves into another component of financial planning, which is savings. And they outline both emergency savings and short-term goals savings. We've talked about this ad nauseum through other podcast episodes, but it is good to be repeated here. And this is different from investing, which we'll get into in the next component of financial planning. But savings is literally the money that you have set aside that is easily accessible to you for those items, emergency and short-term goals. You've heard the advice to have 6 months worth of living expenses saved in an emergency fund. That's great. Of course, some people will choose the route of 3 months, depending on their circumstances and their confidence in being able to get a job in the event of a job loss. And then you've got more recommendations. Primarily, we just talked about this with, or is it coming up? I forget. I don't want to give away other episodes, but for single people, it can be recommended to have a more beefy emergency fund, maybe something more along the lines of 9 to 12 months worth of living expenses saved. So whatever you're going to feel most comfortable with, obviously it spans the gamut of 3 to 12 months, but find yourself somewhere in there, grow your emergency fund. And then you've got your short-term goals, which we've also called sinking funds. So that can be a fund for home maintenance. That could be a fund for vacation. That could be a fund for giving or holidays or you name it. Whatever it is are your things that you want to be spending on, the things that you value. Those are your short-term goals. That's where you're going to put it into hopefully a high yield savings account that you can then easily withdraw from. So that's the savings category.
Yes. And can I throw in another short-term goal that I recently started and I really love?
Please.
So we have a really large backyard and I've always wanted a pool. My husband's been very against pools, very much against it. And
I am for it. I'm so for it.
Thank you. So this was when I first started my business. I was like, I want a pool. He was like, okay, when you're making this much money a year, we'll get a pool. Like almost like, that's never going to happen. And like within 2 years, I hit it. And I was like, okay, are we getting a pool? And he was like, well, no, I didn't know that was possible. Like I didn't think this was possible for your business. And I was like, now we're backtracking. So anyway, fast forward, we've moved into this home now. We have a nice, beautiful backyard and I still want a pool. My husband does not. We are conflicted. We've had people come out. We've had 3 different people come out to give us quotes and draw up plans for a pool, but we just can't pull the trigger. And the reason why is because we would have to take out a loan for it. We would. And putting in a pool right now these days is like over $100,000. And so he says, I don't want you to sign up for that responsibility in your life. Like you already are the breadwinner in the family. I don't want you having that extra added pressure. So I said, fine, what if I save up for it in cash? Like, what if I save $100,000 in cash? And he was like, great. But I didn't like the idea of just like putting it in a pool fund because I don't know if I want that yet. Like I'm not sold myself.
Right.
So I have a things I want fund. It's just a savings fund that I can put money into. Usually it's like if I get a bonus from my work, I will put it in there and I don't have to make a decision about what I'm going to spend that money on now. It's not meant to cover emergencies. It's not meant to cover Christmas. It is meant to be used for any future goals that I haven't even been inspired to have yet, or a pool, whichever comes first.
I love that. Not locking yourself in.
Yeah.
And that's simplifying too sometimes, giving yourself just freedom, open-handed with some of these goals. But yeah, that's the savings category.
Yes. And then we have growth, which I love this one. And that includes retirement planning, which we know is so important, but can be incredibly stressful. children's education, house purchase. So if you want to save up for a down payment on a home, and then other goal-based planning.
Yeah. And so I love that this is under the growth category because I know it might just be semantics, but we often hear people talking about saving for retirement. And I think we're trying to do some work to tease that apart because while I understand what people are saying, you really want to be investing for retirement. You want to be saving for your short-term goals and your emergency fund, because that primarily is talking about savings, meaning you're just taking the money, putting it aside. It may or may not grow by percentages. It's not investing it. You're wanting it easily accessible. But retirement investing. And so that's why they're putting it under this growth category of financial planning. And so the growth meaning that you are hopefully putting it into accounts that are going to earn interest on your money. So that is your 401k, your Roth, 403b, other investment
all
accounts.
All of the options.
Yeah, that's the retirement investing. And then growth. It's interesting to me, that they put kids' education under the growth, maybe because your kids are growing. But of course, that if you're doing a 529,
you're investing that money. So I would definitely say that. But I don't know if I would put children's education under growth personally. I don't know.
Maybe you're investing in your kids to earn money and care for you in your old age.
I'm going to invest in you emotionally, so you'll want to take care of me.
I always make a joke because Eric and I don't have any children, but my sister has 4 kids. And so I'm always joking that I'm going to identify one of them who seems like particularly interested in, being with me until the very end. I'm like, I'm going to especially invest in this one because I think they might. I tell my sister, I'm like, can I just take one of your children in my old age to be responsible for caring for me?
I love that. Well,
you've got 4 of them. Can you just lend me one?
Exactly. Well, even if you have your own children, doesn't guarantee they're going to do that. I asked my kids.
I know, it's
I've
true.
done that with my own kids. I'm like, okay, which of you is going to take care of me? And I even asked Evan, my oldest, I was like, are you going to take care of me when I'm older? And he was like, no, James can do it. And I asked James, and James was like, no, Evan can do it. And I'm like, one of you has got to step up, guys. Maybe not now, but in the future. Like, you've got to step up. I need a leader here.
Yeah. And that's where we can help the kids out by having that retirement investing happening where you are planning for growth so that you're not putting a financial burden on your children. But hopefully they're going to be there to help make decisions as needed and make and advocate for you medically if that's needed. That would be the hope, I suppose.
Exactly.
And then the article goes on to some other kind of good to have, good to-dos as it relates to financial planning. So certainly paying off credit card debt and other high interest loan debt. I love that they specify that because it's not as if we can't carry any degree of debt. I know we've talked about this in other podcast episodes. Sometimes we can use it to our advantage, but it's that high interest debt particularly that we want to be really hacking at and getting that gone as soon as possible so that we're not held back from these other goals. So that's going to be your credit cards and your other high interest debt. And that's really anything above 6 or 7% interest rates. They also advise to make a will. Absolutely. And I think even for people who aren't married or don't have kids, I think this is really important. And I would put medical decision-making under this as well. So not even just a will for what happens to my stuff if I pass, but also what happens to me if I am in a coma or I am in a situation where, medical decisions for me need to be made rather than the hospitals or some other person deciding who's going to make those decisions, you identifying who's going to make those decisions. If anything, I would argue this is almost more important for our single friends out there. Oftentimes, you know, the spouse is the kind of go-to or the child is the go-to in that, but name them, put it on paper, get it notarized.
Exactly.
And then keeping family up to date. So certainly if you are married or, you know, you are single and you've got people who are going to be your
people.
Power of attorney. Yeah, right?
I was going to say your people. That's what I was
Keep
gonna
them
call
up to date. Keep them involved. Make sure that they know and review it annually. This is one of those things that we don't have to be looking at regularly, especially when we're talking about these big overarching pieces of protections, savings, growth. A lot of this can be automated, but we should review it annually because things change. Plot twists get thrown in, and we want to make sure that it's still relevant.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Things change. I have not done this, but it's on my to-do list and I need to just do it. I need to give myself a deadline. I want to create like a Google Doc and give it to my mom and like share it with my mom. And that gives her all of the passwords for everything and even for our safe and where the will is located and all the things. Because if something, God forbid, were to happen to Matt and I want it to be as easy as possible for her to deal with all the mess she's going to have to deal with.
Yeah. Almost like money made easy.
Allison. Yeah, exactly.
Almost
death
like
made
making
easy.
it easy. Yeah. That's an interesting thing though. Like sometimes there's a learning curve. Sometimes there's work that needs to happen. It's not as if the entire process is easy, but the making it easy. We can do things that might require effort, that might require some investment of learning and gaining resources and tools so that it becomes easy in the process of making it easy. Exactly. So for that reason too, I love the title of your book.
Thank you.
Do you know what else we make easy? It's not a plot twist because you always see it coming.
The Bill of the Week!
Right. It's time for the best minute of your entire week. Maybe a baby was born and his name is William. Maybe you paid off your mortgage. Maybe your car died and you're happy to not have to pay that bill anymore. Duck bills, Buffalo Bills, Bill Clinton. This is the Bill of the Week.
Hey y'all, this is Victoria from North Carolina. Last year at Christmas time, I was so excited to buy my daughter one of the expensive lifelike baby dolls, and it was a bill that I'd loved paying for. Over the year, that bill has become very expensive as my daughter and I have enjoyed shopping for little baby things for her baby doll. This year, we have given away the baby doll, and I am thankful to no longer have that bill that grew so large. But here's the best part. She named him William. Can't get better bills than that. Thanks for all you guys do.
Wow, Victoria, that felt like a wild ride, like a 30-second wild ride. First of all, thanks for calling in. But also, okay, it was a bill that you were really excited about, that you didn't mind paying. You were able to give a good gift to your daughter, but then that turned into needing to buy more things. Then it was like a bill you wish you didn't have, but then it was a bill named Bill.
Oh my gosh.
And then it was a bill you gave away. This is complicated.
It is.
But you made it easy by getting rid of it.
Oh,
well
yes.
done.
I feel like this is a really good lesson to your daughter on how parenting is. Like, it's expensive. It doesn't, like, you have to care for it and you have to continue to put money in it. Or like a pet. It's like whenever you have, like, I remember the first time I got a cat, I was in college, my mom was like, this costs money. I'm like, it's fine. If I had this experience with the baby doll, maybe I wouldn't have gotten that cat right away. Because it's a lot of responsibility. This baby doll was a lot of responsibility.
It's such a good lesson. I think that oftentimes we will only think about the upfront cost or investment of something, forgetting about what we're going to want with that thing then, the maintenance costs or just the desires that we have alongside it. I mean, it's an interesting thing to look at. Okay, the baby doll, but now we want a carriage for it and we want cute clothes and we want all the miniature things and we want to set up a little room for it. And it just kind of becomes this whole monster William, this big Bill named Bill.
Oh my gosh.
Man, you just cut ties with William. And I like that. It's a William you gave away.
Yes.
Well done. If you all listening happen to have a baby doll named William that you had to give away because it cost you too many bills, or you are a person named Bill, or you've just got some other tie-in to Bill, you know we like to keep it vague. Visit frugalfriendspodcast.com/Bill. Leave us your bill.
Discover the heartwarming and hilarious world of sibling connections on Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson.
You might be asking yourself, what is sibling revelry?
Yeah, well, we just made it up.
They'll have some laughs and maybe inspire some people along the way with universal tales of what it's like to grow up with brothers and sisters.
We're full-blood siblings, the only full-blood sibling.
In our family. Well, not in the world. I mean,
no, in the whole world. That's just it. Like, no one.
Dive into family tales and explore the human mind with guests like Joel and Benji Madden.
And it's fun because we've decided to open it up, to really like all kinds of different siblings. And it's going to be an awesome season.
It's more than a podcast. It's a celebration of the ties that bind us. Listen to Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
From the studio who brought you the #1 podcast, The Piketon Massacre, this is Murder 101.
A group of high school students started a project to research a string of unsolved murders.
Those murders happened in the mid-1980s.
He's out there doing stuff. He just didn't stop.
Everything that the students predicted through their profile turned out to be accurate.
Redhead killer profile. Male, Caucasian, 5'9" to 6'2", 180 to 270 pounds. Unstable home, absent father and a domineering mother. Right-handed, IQ above 100, most likely heterosexual.
There is no profile of this killer except for the ones the students created.
Just because some of these women no longer have people to speak for them does not mean that they deserve to not be spoken for.
What if this guy's still alive? Like, what if he comes after us?
I said, are you going to kill me? And he said, yes.
Listen to Murder 101 on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And now it's time for the lightning round.
That was aggressive.
Have we added this? I know.
don't know.
Yeah, we get
but
aggressive at the end. I get aggressive at the end.
I'm like excited but scared. All simultaneously.
You
I like
are
this
in
feeling.
the exact right place.
Okay, let's do it. The lightning round.
Yeah, it's just the same as the rest of the podcast. It just is. We're coming to a close soon, and there's more yelling because we've eased you into it now.
Okay, great.
So this question comes from Goldie, our amazing podcast manager, who asks us, what was the best decision you made for simplifying your finances? Allison, you go first because you are our honored co-host.
So
my very special co-host.
So for our family, it was definitely our weekly budget meetings, which, if I'm being honest, it's not every week, maybe every other week. But for us, having a family, running a household together, having kids that we're taking to theater and music lessons and soccer and all the places, it's really hard to get on the same page because you feel like you're just like sometimes two ships crossing in the night, or by the end of the night when you put the kids to bed and you come down and you just want to watch the newest episode of Ted Lasso, which we did last night. So our weekly budget meetings allow us to kind of just like one and done, talk about money. Are we on track? Are there any changes we need to make? Let's pay off the credit cards in full and just get on the same page. That way the rest of the week, we can just be parents and partners.
I like that. Like a getting a to-do thing out of the way so that it's not interrupting your other connection.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool. How long have you done these weekly budget meetings for?
So we started them. It was actually my husband's idea. And I was like, that's ridiculous, which it's not. So he has good ideas, but we started them probably in 2018, and it's every Sunday. Sometimes we do them at dinner in front of the kids. Sometimes we don't, but we talk about all of that. Yeah. But we also talk about just some other life things like, okay, do you have any late night meetings this week? Like what are we cooking for dinner? A lot of times, like I'll make the meal plan or he'll make the meal plan. And then things like, okay, what do the kids have going on? We're in a very busy season just of the year and of our life with children. So we have different choir concerts and music recitals and Cub Scout graduation and all the things. So it allows us to get on the same page for the whole week with our money and our life. That way, during the week, we can just enjoy each other's presence and we don't have any of that like, you said you were going to pay off the credit card bill or you said you were going to pick him up from this. Like, no, we have all of that done so that way we can just enjoy our life during the week.
Yeah. It's interesting because it sounds like a lot. It sounds, I'm sure anyone listening is like, you do that every week, but that almost simplifies it because then there's not as much to do if you're looking at it that often. That's neat. And it includes other things too, it sounds like.
The mental energy. I'm not having to sit here and thinking like, oh my gosh, when I get home or when Matt gets home, I need to talk to him about this or this because I'm not living day by day anymore, which can be really stressful when your days are chaotic. I'm living week by week. So I have a plan for the week that my partner is on board with our money and our life. So that way, the rest of the week, I just need to take action and implement what we talked about, if that makes sense.
Yes. Wow. Mine is not quite as cool, but it's simple and it's automation. It amazes me still that so many people do not have certain things automated. And it just makes life so much easier that I have to set something up once, but then after that, like savings is automated, investing is automated, a lot of my bill pay is automated. Like it's just so simple. Then all I have to worry about is my discretionary spending. And
it's awesome.
It's great.
Do you have
and making sure that all of that is below my means.
Oh, yeah. There you go. But do you have all of that come out at a certain time? So like for instance, like do you have it come out right after payday?
So both my husband and I get paid bi-weekly, but on each other's off weeks. So once a week, we are receiving someone's paycheck.
Okay.
So I have oscillated my bills. Like there are some that come out at the beginning of the month and some halfway through the month. So that can kind of volley between our two
I love
payments.
That. And you can anyone who's listening, you can ask for your due date to be changed. So if it makes more sense for you to pay a bill at the beginning of the month, just ask for them to change your due date. And typically they will. But that's very similar to what we did.
Some bills I've broken into bi-monthly. Like car payment, I make bi-monthly, which allows me to add a little bit more to it. And
that's awesome.
I don't know. Just all the different hacks you can do with automation.
And then you don't have to think about it. Your mental energy is not spent on it.
Yes. Yep. Exactly. Until like a bank account changes and you got to go back and remember, okay, what all comes out of that bank account?
Oh, yeah. Or your credit card gets stolen and your number gets stolen. Yes. Which, can I tell a really funny story about this?
We love funny stories.
Okay. So I have a business and I have 2 business credit cards. I have one that I use primarily and I have one that's just kind of like a backup. Just don't use it very often. Well, I also have a bookkeeper and my bookkeeper, there was like an Amazon purchase and she was like, what is this Amazon purchase? I have to categorize it. And I was like, I didn't make that Amazon purchase. And she's like, well, it's here. It's for this much money. We have to figure out what it is. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I think my credit card has been stolen, my business credit card. And I'm like, oh, do I really want to deal with this? I go through all of my Amazon orders. I'm like, did I buy something personal on accident? with the wrong card. I cannot find this order. So I tell them, I can't find it, but I think I'm just going to ignore it because it wasn't that much money. And I know it's going to be such a hassle to switch everything over to a new card. And I would rather pay the $25 of have it compromised, which is so awful. So she was like, Allison, no, you need to switch your card. I was like, fine. Cancel my card, reported it as fraud, all of the things. And then I get an email. I reported fraud on buying my own book. I bought a copy of my book on Amazon.
No.
And then I was like, this is fraud. So Amazon is like, okay, we're canceling your order for Money Made Easy because you reported it as fraud. I was like, I went through all of that.
That's too wild.
And it was my own book.
Not only was it your own purchase, it was on your own book. Oh man, Allison, that's too good.
I was like,
that is
this
very
is
funny.
Really embarrassing. And so, I'd already canceled my card. I had the new one in. I had to sit down and go through my bank statement and change, because everything comes out on my credit card with my business.
Wow.
Change all of the auto pays so that way I didn't miss something. All because I marked my own book as a fraudulent purchase. So
that's a great story.
I am my own worst enemy.
I appreciate your vulnerability there.
The
vulnerability lightning round.
There we go.
Oh, well, thanks everyone so much for listening. We hope that this was helpful to you in figuring out how to simplify your money a bit. And of course, definitely get Allison's book if you want more tangible tips on how you can simplify that, make your money easy. Many of you also know we have a membership for our listeners who are paying off debt where we do monthly money challenges and we offer accountability groups, which we know is so important in this personal finance journey, finding other buds along the way. So we want to congratulate one of our members for a big win. This one comes from Jacqueline M, who shared, I decided to do another 30-day no spend this month. Whoa, Jacqueline. Last month, I kept a list of what I wanted to buy when the no spend was over. And by the end of the month, there was only one thing I still wanted. It was very sobering. This month feels much easier to navigate. I feel quote unquote unhooked from the constant, relentless buying treadmill. Sometimes that's what we need, Jacqueline, like that, like something to interrupt that pattern, shake it up, throw them a plot twist, and then realize that, oh, wow, that I just needed I needed an interrupter. I needed a disruptor to kind of show me that I don't actually care about these things.
Yes.
Holy smokes. That's so cool. Well done.
Yes. That's like a detox. You had a money detox, and then you're able to introduce back in the spending that is valuable to you. I feel like so many people, we should just do that. Like once a month, every year, I need to just schedule a money detox. I'm going to choose it on the shortest month, February. Okay. Well, congratulations.
That is a good one.
Congratulations, Jacqueline. That's amazing. And I can't wait to hear. I hope I get to hear how month 2 of your 30-day no spend month goes.
Yes. If you want to check in on Jacqueline or just check in on the membership where we have all kinds of courses, interviews, challenges, just all kinds of amazing people like Jacqueline, head to frugalfriendspodcast.com/club. Check it out.
And after you do that, we will see you for another episode next time. I get to come back, guys. I get to come back.
Yay. We got more from Allison.
See ya.
Frugal Friends is produced by Eric Sirianni.
Oh my, Allison. I don't even, I'm still reeling from your story.
I know. Isn't it so
It's funny
sad?
because I have a similar story where I made like an order on Walmart online, and it was on a credit card that was connected to Eric's phone number, and the credit card company flagged it. They're like, "This is weird. This probably wasn't you," and Eric looked at it and he thought, yeah, that's weird. Probably wasn't me. Didn't even think to ask me. Just, I am not a spender. That's the thing about me is like, I don't really need detoxes because I'm always just a little bit like,
I need a detox.
Nah, I don't need that. Nah, I can get by with what I have. It's actually kind of bad sometimes. Anyhow, he was like, no, certainly I don't even need to check with Jill. Like, she just doesn't ever spend money. So, like, I'm just going to say it was fraudulent. Well, yeah, no, it wasn't. I actually did go on Walmart.com. But it's not as amazing as your story of, like, purchasing your own product.
Yeah. Yes.
And then flagging it as fraudulent.
Embarrassing. Then I had to go back to my bookkeepers and they were like, oh, did you figure out like where the scam was? Like, okay, oh, and not even that. Are you ready? So then I'm talking to Chase on the phone whenever I was originally telling them like, yeah, this is fraud. And they were like, okay, well, we can see it comes from this Amazon account. Is this your Amazon account? And I was like, yes. And they're like, well, you're going to need to change your Amazon password. So then I go to Matt. I'm like, we have to change our Amazon password. We have to be aware because someone might be on Amazon buying things like books that without
buying my books.
Yeah. And so then like literally days later, Matt's like, this was literally your purchase, your book. I had pre-ordered it. So anyone who pre-orders something, like, oh my gosh, I felt so stupid.
Well, that is a good tip because I have noticed that specifically with Amazon. When you buy things from different parts of Amazon, sometimes it doesn't show up. Like, your actual physical tangible orders will show up differently than digital orders, you know, like podcasts or books or your annual membership fee or whatever that is. And that usually does trip me up where I'll get this charge and I'm like, well, what is that? I don't see it in my orders. Oh, it's in the digital orders or it's in this section of Amazon. So it is worth checking all of those things before canceling. But oh my gosh, just the irony of
and you know what?
Book. I
didn't even buy it again. I was like, whatever. My publisher sent me some copies. I don't even need to buy another. I'll just let that one be a loss.
That's amazing.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, you know, it's just that is how you know that no one has it all together. Like people don't have it all together. They only show you what they want you to see. And I wanted everyone to see my mess up.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. So.
Zoop.
Perfect.
Discover the heartwarming and hilarious world of sibling connections on Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson. Dive into family tales, explore the human mind, and laugh with guests like Joel and Benji Madden. It's more than a podcast, it's a celebration of the ties that bind us.
And it's fun because we've decided to open it up to really like all kinds of different siblings. And it's going to be an awesome season.
Listen to Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Jacob Goldstein. I used to host Planet Money. Now I'm starting a new show. It's called What's Your Problem? Every week on What's Your Problem, entrepreneurs and engineers describe the future they're going to build once they solve a few problems. I'm talking to people trying to figure out how to do things that no one on the planet knows how to do, from creating a drone delivery business to building a car that can truly drive itself. Listen to What's Your Problem on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.